Has llegado a misterios de la oscuridad. En este espacio prohibido, la noche oculta verdades demasiado aterradoras para ser reveladas a la luz del día. Aquí, los misterios que emergen del abismo oscuro desvelan secretos que harán temblar tu cordura. Las historias que estás por descubrir desafiarán todo lo que creías conocer, envolviéndote en un torbellino de miedos y enigmas. Ten cuidado al avanzar, pues algunas puertas, una vez abiertas, nunca podrán cerrarse, y sus revelaciones podrían costarte más de lo que imaginas. The splintered wood of the motel room door shuddered under a fist. 3:17 a.m. Those crimson digits on the cheap clock seared themselves onto Silas's retinas as consciousness clawed its way back. His skull throbbed in sympathy with the hammering. 3 more impacts, heavy and deliberate. Silas. Hey, it's me, Corbin. From last night, man. Open this thing up. He levered himself upright on the protesting mattress, the thin cotton of his t-shirt clinging damply. Corbin? The name echoed emptily in the fog of his mind. No Corbin, no anyone. Just the long, lonely ribbon of highway unspooling behind him. Come on, pal. You said I could bunk here. We shook on it. A desert dryness coated Silas's throat. Through the ill-fitting curtains, the parking lot's fluorescent wash bled in, painting stripes of jaundiced light across the carpet's abstract stains. Another tattoo of knuckles, insistent, demanding. I see the light under the door. Quit playing games. Bare feet met the chill linoleum. The room gave a nauseating lurch. His mouth tasted foully of stale grounds and phantom cigarettes, a habit he'd never possessed. The last clear memory, pulling into this desolate roadside haven near 8, the check-in, the immediate surrender to exhaustion after 12 hours gripping the wheel. Nothing beyond that threshold. The door rattled violently in its flimsy frame. Silas crept closer, squinting at the peephole. Opaque, painted over, or deliberately obscured. Look! The voice outside dropped, conspiratorial. Got the security feed, right here. Phone screen shows you clear as day, letting me in around midnight. We rapped for like an hour. Seriously, man, drawing a blank? A cold knot tightened in Silas's gut. Impossible. He snatched his phone from the nightstand. 3:19 a.m. No alerts, no missed connections. Wallet, keys, undisturbed beside it. Everything outwardly placid, yet a turbulent wrongness churned beneath the surface of his thoughts. I show this to the night manager. You don't open up. You gave me your word, man. A place to crash. Pressing his ear flat against the particle board, Silas heard the man's breathing. Labored, almost ragged. Distantly, the hallway ice machine hummed its monotonous tune. Okay, Silas heard himself say, his voice a fragile rasp. Prove it. Show me the footage. Hold your phone to the peephole. Silence stretched for a few heartbeats. Can't. Thing's busted. Meet me at the desk. We'll watch it with the clerk. No, slide the phone under the door. This thing's worth $1,000, buddy. Not sliding it anywhere. You know damn well who I am. Spent half the night spilling my guts about my situation. You got it, you said. Said you'd help a guy out. Silas's hands trembled as he fumbled with the deadbolt, confirming its solidity, then the flimsy security chain. Both secure. Outside, a floorboard groaned under shifting weight. "I'm calling the cops," Silas stated, finding a sliver of resolve. "Do it. I got you on camera inviting me in. You're the one reneging." His own phone felt alien in his grip as he instinctively opened the camera roll. 12 new thumbnails stared back from the gallery, captured in the dead of night. His stomach plummeted. He hadn't taken any photos. The first showed the motel lot, bathed in eerie light, empty save for his own sedan and a battered cobalt blue car he didn't recognize. Then a series of blurred interior shots. The flickering television, the closed bathroom door, the grimy window pane. The final image held a reflection in the room's cheap mirror. Not him. An older man, perhaps 50, unshaven, a faded red baseball cap pulled low. "Check those timestamps." Corbin's voice filtered through the wood, laced with amusement. 12:47 a.m. Anything clicking yet? Icy sweat traced a path down his spine. He navigated to his recent calls. 3 outgoing connections between midnight and 2, dialed to an unfamiliar number. "Your phone telling tales too, huh?" A dry, rasping laugh. "How loaded were you? Forgot the whole damn night?" Silas hadn't touched alcohol in months. He scrolled frantically through texts. Nothing. But the browser history. Searches timestamped 1:13 a.m. Budget motels. Highway 16. Protect against identity theft. How to vanish without trace. "Last call," Corbin warned. "Open this door or I fetch the manager." Silas stumbled back, breath catching in his throat. The room seemed to constrict, the patterned wallpaper pressing inward. Think. Those lost hours. What happened? His laptop rested on the small desk. He flipped it open. The screen glowed, already displaying a local news site. The headline froze the blood in his veins. "Authorities seek person of interest following gas station hold up." Beneath it, a grainy surveillance still. A man in a red baseball cap. More knocking, harder, rattling the very walls. "Time's up. Giving you 10 seconds. Keys, wallet, jammed into pockets. The window. Maybe break it. Make a run for the car. His legs felt like lead, unresponsive. 10, 9, 8. The desk lamp sputtered, casting dancing shadows. He saw it then, writing on the complimentary notepad beside the lamp. His own script. Let him in, he knows. Has to end tonight. 7, 6. His phone vibrated. A text from the unknown number. Remember now. 5, 4. The lamp died, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the exterior light slicing through the curtains. A faint scraping sound at the door. A key card sliding into the electronic lock. A small green light blinked approval. 3. The deadbolt retracted with an audible click, seemingly of its own accord. 2. The security chain strained, pulled taut, then ripped free from the doorframe with a screech of tortured metal. 1. The door swung inward. Corbin stood silhouetted in the hallway glow, holding his phone aloft. Its screen played silent footage. Silas, hours earlier, face split in a welcoming smile, holding this very door open for him. "Ready to finish our conversation?" Corbin asked. Silas's gaze snapped back to the notepad. Below his own message, smaller words were materializing, as if written by an invisible hand. "You can't run from yourself." Corbin stepped inside. His face seemed to shimmer for a fraction of a second, momentarily morphing into Silas's own features before resolving back into the older man's weary countenance. He pushed the door closed behind him. "Let's talk about last night," he said softly. "Everything." The clock displayed 3:23 a.m. Outside, Silas's car alarm erupted into a piercing wail. Corbin ignored it, settling into the room's solitary, worn armchair, unnervingly still. "You recall the gas station, don't you? Murphy's? What happened after you spotted me there?" Silas pressed himself against the far wall, the rough texture scraping his back. "I didn't stop anywhere. Drove straight here." Corbin produced a crumpled receipt, holding it up like evidence. "Murphy's Gas and Go, 11:47 p.m. Silas's signature sprawled across the bottom. "You tailed me," Corbin stated flatly. "Watched me go in, saw what I did, followed me right to this place, got the room next door. Took all those pictures. Smart move." His phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. "Check your trunk." "I didn't follow anyone," Silas insisted, his voice thin. "I don't know what you're talking about." A humorless smile stretched Corbin's lips, revealing stained teeth. "No? Then why the calls to the police tip line? Why jot down my license plate?" Silas glanced again at the notepad. More spectral writing. "Cobalt sedan, PCR 847. "You said you wanted to help," Corbin continued, his tone conversational yet heavy with menace. "Said you understood needing cash, being desperate. Said you'd stay quiet if I cut you in. That's why you let me in. Why we talked so long, hashing out the details." The car alarm screamed on, unanswered, unnoticed by the world outside. But then the nerves hit, right? Second thoughts started creeping in. That's when you really hit the bottle. Found it in your trunk. Silas's hands flew to his temples, the pounding intensifying. "I don't drink," he choked out. "Haven't since the accident." Corbin leaned forward, his eyes pinning Silas. "Since Eliza." The name struck Silas like a physical blow, stealing his breath. He hadn't uttered it, hadn't allowed himself to think it in 2 years. How do you know about her? You told me last night, poured it all out, the crash, the running, trying to wipe the slate clean. Corbin rose slowly from the chair. About how you never forgave yourself. The room tilted violently. Silas slid down the wall, landing hard on the floor. But you can't run forever, Corbin said, standing over him. Can't hide from what's done. That's what you kept saying right before you passed out. Right before you handed me your key card and told me to come back later. Silas squeezed his eyes shut, fighting for air. When he opened them, Corbin was kneeling before him. His face flickered again. Silas's own reflection, but older, ravaged by guilt. The robbery? Silas whispered. How much did you take? We took, Corbin corrected gently. 4,270. Your shares waiting in your trunk, along with the empty whiskey bottle, and Eliza's picture. The one you carry everywhere but pretend doesn't exist. His phone buzzed a final time. The screen displayed a photograph, his car trunk gaping open, revealing a brown paper bag overflowing with currency, a half-empty bottle of cheap liquor, and a creased, faded photograph he thought he'd incinerated years ago. Time to face it, Corbin said. His voice was Silas's now, roughened by regret and the passage of years. Time to remember it all. The clock clicked to 3:33 a.m. Abruptly, the car alarm ceased. And then, slowly, horribly, the memories began to surface, not just of the previous night, but of 2 years prior. A rain-slicked road, the scent of alcohol on his breath, and Eliza trusting him to get her home. The man, his future, his penance, settled back into the chair, waiting patiently as the dam of denial crumbled, as Silas remembered the truth of who he was, the specter he'd been fleeing. Ready to talk now? Corbin asked. Silas nodded, the immense weight finally crushing him. Yes, he said to himself. I'm ready. Dawn broke 4 hours later. The motel room held only Silas, the lingering scent of whiskey, and the notepad bearing his final confession. Same time next year. You can't hide forever. In the parking lot, his car stood alone. The trunk was shut tight, but he knew its contents intimately. The burden he carried from town to town, motel to motel, replaying this conversation, trying vainly to drown the truth. He checked out at 8 sharp. The manager offered no comment on disturbances or damaged doors. The security monitors likely showed nothing but an empty corridor throughout the night. No visitor had knocked. But as Silas pulled onto the highway, his rearview mirror captured it. A cobalt blue sedan maintaining a steady distance, its driver obscured but for the unmistakable glint of a red baseball cap. Following him toward the next stop, the next inevitable reckoning until the running finally ceased. He glanced at his phone one last time. A single new message glowed on the screen. See you tonight. He didn't need to save the contact. He knew the number by heart. it was his own. "6 months back, the crumpled shape lodged halfway down the embankment nearly vaulted my delivery van off the asphalt. That memory clings. Even now, knowing it wasn't flesh and bone I saw that night, the apparition materializes in my mind's eye nightly. Static sentinel at the precise location, its right arm extended, thumb hooked emphatically downward, gesturing away from the treacherous curve of Blackwood Bend. My existence unfolds in the nocturnal solitude of a Horizon Health Logistics van, a 10-hour pilgrimage distributing sterile supplies to the hushed corridors of nursing homes and hospice facilities spanning 3 counties. The compensation suffices, and the quiet. Well, the quiet is a necessary balm. After Clara departed, taking young Leo and leaving behind a silence that resonated like a struck gong within our walls, the road's natural hush became preferable. Each night, my route dictates passage down Blackwood Road, typically between the witching hours of 2 and 3, 20 miles of unlit ribbon unfurling through seas of whispering corn and dense clutches of woodland. No sentry street lights, no comforting squares of window glow. Only primordial darkness punctuated by the occasional glint of reflectors, warning of sharp deviations. The nadir is Blackwood Bend, a brutal hairpin cinched tight around a skeletal ancient sycamore, where the roadbed abruptly sheds 8 feet into a shadowed drainage gulch. That inaugural night, my headlamps snagged on something dark, sprawled obscenely in the ditch. The brakes screamed protest, sending boxes of intravenous tubing skittering like startled rodents in the cargo bay. It bore the unmistakable silhouette of a man, face down in the mire, clad in black, one arm contorted at an angle that bespoke violent fracture. Flashlight gripped tight, phone already dialing 911 in my head, I approached the precipice. Yet, the ditch yielded nothing. No slumped form, no disturbance in the slick mud beyond the usual detritus of discarded cans and decaying leaves. 5 minutes I stood sentinel, the flashlight's beam slicing methodically through the gloom. Then a flicker of white at vision's periphery. Turning, I beheld it, a towering figure stationed at the bend's apex, perhaps 50 feet distant, right arm rigidly outstretched, thumb pointing groundward. My shouted query dissolved unanswered into the night air. 3 tentative steps forward, and the presence evaporated like mist. Exhaustion, I rationalized. A phantom conjured by doubled shifts undertaken in pursuit of funds for Leo's impending birthday. But the following night, identical time, identical curve, it stood resurrected. Motionless effigy, arm extended, thumb depressed. This time, velocity was my shield. I drove on. For a week, the ritual persisted. Each passage yielded the same spectral tableau, fixed in space and posture. Sometimes apprehended in the oncoming glare of my lights, other times glimpsed fleetingly in the rear view's silvered rectangle post-transit. Once, a terrifying peripheral illusion. It seemed to sprint alongside the van, effortlessly matching my 45 miles per hour, only for a second glance to reveal naught but empty roadside whipping past. I rerouted, embracing a circuitous detour that bled 40 precious minutes from my schedule. 2 weeks of this evasion prompted a summons from my supervisor. Clientele registered complaints of tardy deliveries. Blackwood Road, inescapable, reclaimed me, and the figure, patient as stone, awaited my return. Inquiries commenced. At the truck stop bordering Blackwood Road, grizzled drivers spun yarns steeped in local dread. 1987, a university student vanished along this very stretch, her vehicle discovered abandoned roadside near the bend, ignition keys dangling. 1993, a local motorcyclist met his end here, the crash obliterating him so thoroughly only his helmet, split like a rotten gourd, remained. 2006, a minivan, veering off course, submerged in the flood-swollen ditch. Mother and children recovered 3 days later, still belted within their watery tomb. The father, however, was never found. Obsessively, I chronicled every rumor, constructing spreadsheets, correlating appearances with lunar phases, meteorological conditions, ambient temperatures, rain or starlight, new moon or full, sweltering summer humidity or biting winter frost. The apparition manifested irrespective. The sole constant, the temporal window, invariably between 2 and 3 a.m. A dashcam yielded only vacant stretches of road. An infrared camera painted thermal portraits of anomalous cold spots precisely where the figure stood, yet delineated no discernible form. Motion-activated trail cameras deployed along the bend captured countless frames of deer, raccoons, even a bewildered coyote, but remained stubbornly blind to the sentinel. Last week, resolve hardened into action. Enough spectral hide-and-seek. Confrontation was necessary. Dialogue, touch, any interaction to anchor my sanity. Departing early, I parked at the bend by 1:45 a.m., silencing the engine but leaving the headlamps to cleave the thin fog coalescing from the fields. I sat, transfixed by the dashboard clock's digital pulse, each minute an eternity. 2:17 a.m., a flicker in the side mirror. It stood nearer than ever before, coalescing from the gloom. Details sharpened. The black coat resolved into a long, dark dress, its hem ragged, caked with mud. The right arm wasn't merely extended, it was wrenched backward at an angle defying skeletal structure. And the thumb. It didn't point down the road ahead, but was bent utterly backward, indicating the ditch itself. Slowly, I exited the van, gaze locked onto the figure. The air temperature plummeted, perhaps 20 degrees in 3 paces, my exhalations pluming white. The figure remained inert, breathless, just present. Face obscured by shadow, arm impossibly twisted, thumb a grotesque signpost. 10 feet separated us. Close enough now to perceive the dress wasn't merely muddy, but saturated, dripping water that strangely vanished before striking the asphalt. 8 feet. The fog thickened, swirling around my ankles like frigid, spectral hands. 6 feet. A sharp, puppet-like twitch articulated the figure's head. 4 feet. The cloying miasma of stagnant water and decomposition filled my nostrils. I halted, raising a hand, mouth forming unspoken words. Its head snapped upward. Where features should have resided, only black, viscous water streamed from the void beneath the hood. The contorted arm shot forward, seizing my wrist. The contact felt like plunging my limb into glacial depths. The thumb pressed insistently into my palm. Not yielding flesh, but something hard, smooth, small, metallic. Recoiling violently, I scrambled back to the van, engine roaring to life. tires spitting gravel. 20 miles I fled, exceeding the speed limit, until the sanctuary lights of the truck stop embraced me. In the trembling quiet of the parking lot, I finally unclenched my fist. There, imprinted deep into the flesh, rested a small brass key. The distinctive cut of its head resonated with a detail from the trucker's tale. The vanished student's car, found abandoned, its key forever missing. The subsequent night, I returned. It was there, same place, same posture, but fear had ceded to understanding. Parking, I walked directly to the ditch's verge. The fog, punctual as ever, rolled in. The temperature plunged, yet held no terror. I withdrew the key, holding it aloft. Instantly, the figure materialized beside me. The face of churning black water inclined toward the culvert's murky bottom. The broken arm pointed downward with undeniable imperative. Following the trajectory of that shattered thumb, my eyes caught a faint metallic gleam within the muck. Something awaited discovery, submerged for 37 years. I descended, the mud greedily sucking at my boots. Near the bottom, half interred in decades of accumulated silt, lay the skeletal remains of a car, the corroded ghost of an early 80s Honda Civic. The brass key slid into the trunk lock with a sigh of homecoming. A mechanism finally granted its purpose. Inside, cocooned in weathered plastic, lay a sheaf of letters. Love letters, dozens, addressed to the missing student, penned by her married professor. They detailed with chilling detachment his plan, how he would orchestrate the accident, watch her car plunge from Blackwood Bend, ensuring no one would ever unearth the truth. But someone knew. Someone had waited across the chasm of years, waited for a solitary driver to pause, to perceive, to finally look. The authorities were summoned. The trunk yielded more than letters. It surrendered evidence, answers, and ultimately, a measure of closure to a family suspended in unknowing for nearly 4 decades. I still navigate that route nightly, past Blackwood Bend, past the depression where the resurrected car was exhumed, past the spot where the figure once held its vigil. It is gone now. The arm that indicated the path, the thumb that guided my descent, the face of black water that waited with such profound patience, vanished. Yet sometimes when the fog unfurls its spectral shroud and the air bites cold, a fleeting shape registers in my rear view. A form by the roadside, an arm upraised, not in supplication, but perhaps in acknowledgement, in gratitude. I no longer stop. There is no need. The entity found its quarry, the truth dredged from the mire, the key to its revelation, and a soul willing to heed the silent plea. Driving past Blackwood Bend between 2 and 3 in the morning now, only empty road stretches before me. The quiet here feels altered, not the oppressive weight of my vacant home, nor the functional stillness of the night shift. It feels resolved, like a protracted vigil concluded, a narrative finally spoken. The key remains in my possession, not for necessity. The police catalog the letters, the evidence. I keep it as a talisman, a reminder that perception is fallible, that appearances deceive, that sometimes what seems a horrifying portent is, in fact, a summons. What resembles a roadside phantom is, in truth, a silent witness. What masquerades as a ghost story is fundamentally about justice deferred. The professor's trial commences next month. Further searches of his residence unearthed corroborating evidence. More letters, hinting at other victims, other secrets he believed safely entombed within the mud and water of Blackwood Bend. My statement is logged, recounting everything, save for the apparition, the face of churning water, the impossibly twisted arm, the glacial touch, the key pressed into my palm. Certain truths resist translation for those who haven't traversed that particular stretch of road in the dead of night, who haven't witnessed what stirs in the fog between 2 and 3 a.m. Clara called last week. News travels. She'd heard about the delivery driver who inadvertently fractured a cold case, who delivered a killer to reckoning, who offered solace to a family after 37 years. Leo, she mentioned, had asked about me. Perhaps a visit could be arranged. Yes, I agreed. That would be welcome. I have stories now, I told her. Not of specters or phantoms in the mist. Real stories about patience, about observation, about extending a hand to someone in need, even when the reasons remain shrouded. The night shift continues. The deliveries proceed. Blackwood Bend remains a waypoint between 2 and 3 a.m., but my focus is now fixed forward, on the unfolding road, not the receding reflection. Whatever lingered there for 37 years has found its peace, its justice, and moved on. Occasionally, other drivers inquire about the bend, whisper the persistent legends, swear they too have glimpsed a figure standing sentinel, arm outstretched. My counsel is simple. Drive with care, attend the road, and remember that initial impressions rarely capture the whole truth. And should their headlights or rear-view mirror ever capture something waiting in the fog, arm extended, perhaps they'll recall my story. Perhaps they'll consider that the most terrifying presence isn't always the one lurking in the shadows. Sometimes the true horror has been hiding in plain sight all along, desperate for someone to finally stop, look closer, listen, assist, to haul the truth from the suffocating embrace of mud and water where it has lain buried for far too long. The figure is gone from Blackwood Bend, but innumerable roads remain. Countless curves conceal their own secrets. Other figures wait in the darkness, nursing their untold stories, their undiscovered truths. All they require is someone willing to stop. The metronome beat of the heart monitor pulsed through the ward's profound stillness. A glance at my watch. 2:37 a.m. Hours yet, stretching thin until the shift relinquished its hold. That's when the anomaly appeared. A patient, adrift at the hallway's terminus, hospital gown stirring as if touched by a phantom current. But no breath of wind penetrated this hermetically sealed ward, and this floor, this entire wing, had lain dormant under renovation dust for months. My name is Ilara Vance. For half a decade, the night shift at St. Jude's Infirmary has been my domain. I believed I'd witnessed the spectrum of nocturnal hospital life, the frantic ballet of resuscitation, the lunar tides pulling at fragile minds, the rare escapee from the psychiatric floors above. Nothing, however, had sculpted my reality for the encounter awaiting me this night. The shift had commenced under the guise of normalcy. Rounds completed, charges checked. I'd retreated to the cocoon of the nurse's station, nursing a cup of tragically lukewarm coffee. The Nightingale Wing, 3rd floor, was an island of unusual calm, cradling just 3 souls, all stable, submerged in sleep. Chartim beckoned, a familiar ritual, when the very texture of the air shifted. It grew dense, charged with an unseen static that lifted the fine hairs along my forearms. A subconscious scan of the surroundings followed. Was a storm gathering? But the windows framed only a placid, star-strewn canvas. And then, the first flicker at perception's edge. A shape, pale-gowned, haunting the far end of the corridor. My head snapped around. Gone. A self-deprecating shake of the head, blaming exhaustion, caffeine's frayed edges. Yet a cold knot tightened low in my gut, whispering dissent. Something felt intrinsically wrong. Another round, I decided, if only to appease the rising tide of unease. Past the occupied rooms I crept, peering into each small world. Mr. Alistair Finch in 301, his snores a soft rhythm section. Mrs. Eleanor Davies in 302, the oxygen concentrator humming its steady bass line. And in 303, I froze. The bed starkly empty, sheets thrown back in a gesture of recent departure. My pulse leaped, a frantic bird against my ribs. The bathroom check yielded nothing. Empty. I spun, rushing towards the nurse's station, mind already formulating the code yellow alert for a missing patient. But as my hand reached for the receiver, I saw her again. She stood at the precise juncture where our active wing bled into the shadowed mouth of the abandoned section, her back a slender silhouette against the deeper darkness. Long dark hair cascaded past her shoulders. "Excuse me," my voice projected, unnaturally loud in the echoing quiet. "You really shouldn't be wandering. Let me help you return to your room." Silence answered. She remained utterly immobile, a statue carved from stillness. A tremor traced its icy path down my spine, but professionalism asserted itself. A disoriented patient needing guidance, that was all. I advanced, my own footsteps seeming to boom on the polished linoleum. "Ma'am," I repeated, closing the distance. "Are you feeling all right?" Still, nothing. Mere feet separated us now. I extended a hand, aiming for the frail shoulder, and my fingers encountered nothing. They passed clean through the space she occupied. I recoiled, stumbling backward, heart hammering against my sternum like a desperate prisoner. The figure executed a slow, deliberate turn. I found myself gazing into the visage of a young woman, her skin possessing a pale, near-translucent quality. But her eyes were abyssal pools, utterly black, devoid of light or reflection. Her mouth opened, shaping itself for speech, but what emerged was not language, but a low, soul-chilling moan. Simultaneously, the corridor lights stuttered violently, and a wave of profound cold washed over me, stealing my breath. I ran. There's no pride in admitting it, but in that instant, years of training, protocols, experience, all evaporated. Back to the relative safety of the nurse's station I fled, breath tearing in ragged gasps. I snatched the phone, fingers fumbling numb, dialing security. "This is Nurse Vance, Nightingale Wing, 3rd floor," I managed, the words tumbling out. "Requesting immediate assistance. There's an intruder on the floor. An intruder, nurse? The security guard's voice dripped with practiced skepticism. Positive it isn't just one of your patients out for a stroll? No, I insisted, voice tight with suppressed panic. This is different. Please just come up. Disconnecting. I risked a glance back down the hall, half convinced the spectral woman would be hovering inches away. The corridor stretched empty, yet the oppressive weight in the air lingered, thick and expectant, like the moments before lightning strikes. Deep breaths I coached myself, attempting to rein in the frantic gallop of my heart. There had to be a rational explanation. Extreme fatigue? An elaborate, cruel prank? Yet a deeper certainty resonated within me. What I had witnessed transcended the natural, the human. The elevator announced its arrival with a soft chime, depositing 2 uniformed security guards. I relayed the events quickly, concisely, strategically omitting the detail of my hand passing through the apparition. Even fractured by fear, I knew the sound of madness. Understood, the senior guard responded, his expression shifting to one of genuine concern. We'll conduct a thorough sweep. You remain here at the station. See anything at all, radio us at once. I nodded, a wave of gratitude washing over me at their solid presence. As their flashlights sliced beams through the waiting shadows, a fraction of my terror receded. Whatever entity haunted this floor, I was no longer confronting it alone. But as the minutes bled into one another, unease coiled anew. They were taking too long. The wing wasn't vast. Their sweep should have concluded. I reached for the radio, poised to call, when the world plunged into absolute blackness. Not just the standard lights, everything. Even the emergency backups failed to engage. The sole illumination emanated from the faint, ghostly glow of the computer monitors at my station. Into this sudden void crept a sound. Footsteps, originating from the direction of the sealed wing. But these were not the heavy, reassuring tread of the guards. These were lighter, possessing an almost ethereal quality, a soft shuffling. My hand scrabbled for my phone, its flashlight function activating with a click. The beam felt woefully inadequate, a pinprick against the suffocating dark. I swept it down the hallway, and the blood in my veins seemed to crystallize into ice. She was there, the spectral woman, but not solitary this time. Arrayed behind her, like a spectral congregation, were other figures, dozens perhaps, all clad in hospital gowns, all sharing those same fathomless black eyes. They began to advance, their movements disjointed, unnatural, like marionettes with tangled strings. I stumbled backward, my mind scream in flight, while my limbs remained leaden, unresponsive. As they drew nearer, recognition pierced through the terror. Mr. Silas Thorne, lost to a heart attack only last month. Mrs. Isabella Rossi, whose battle with cancer ended just the previous week. And at the forefront, my breath hitched, lodging painfully in my throat. It was Dr. Eris Moreau, my mentor, my guide, deceased these past several years. They formed a silent circle around me, their collective cold presence making each breath an effort. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for an end I couldn't comprehend. Then a touch on my shoulder, solid, warm, undeniably real. My eyes flew open. Dr. Moreau stood before me, not the hollow-eyed specter, but as I remembered him, vibrant, his eyes filled with familiar kindness. He offered a gentle smile. "It's all right, Ilara." His voice resonated, seeming to echo from a vast distance. "We mean you no harm." What is this?" The question emerged as a strained whisper. "A thinning of the veil," he answered, his gaze sweeping across the assembled spirits. "Once each year, on this precise night, the boundary between our existence and yours grows permeable. We are able to cross briefly. But why?" I asked, bewildered, looking into the sea of faces, some familiar, others lost to time before my tenure. Why return? A melancholic smile touched Dr. Moreau's lips. Some carry unfinished tasks. Others yearn for one last glimpse of those they loved. And some, he paused, his gaze locking with mine, intense and purposeful. Some return to convey a message. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a murmur, sharing words that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of my life. As his final word faded, the spectral forms around us began to dissolve, their edges blurring like watercolor in rain. The oppressive darkness receded. By the time his message concluded, I stood alone once more in the corridor, the lights flickering erratically back to life. I remained motionless, stunned, the colossal weight of the experience settling upon me. The elevator chimed again. The two security guards emerged, brows furrowed in confusion. "Dispatch call you again, nurse?" one asked. "We got a signal, but we came up maybe 20 minutes ago. Place was quiet as a tomb. Checked everywhere." My mouth opened, then closed. How could words possibly encapsulate the impossible? "False alarm," I heard myself say, the lie feeling foreign on my tongue. "Everything is quite all right now." As they departed, I sank heavily into the chair at the nurse's station, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. I knew, with chilling certainty, that the approaching daylight would demand difficult choices. The message Dr. Moreau had entrusted to me, it was not a burden I could simply ignore. But for this moment, as the first tentative fingers of dawn began to paint the eastern windows, I allowed myself the luxury of breath, of simply existing within a reality suddenly rendered infinitely larger, stranger, and more profoundly wondrous than I had ever dared to conceive. The night shift would never hold the same meaning again, nor would I. The sullied tracks halted precisely at my threshold, as though whoever forged them had dissolved into the very air. I remained rooted, fingers suspended inches from the brass knob, my thoughts a frantic cascade of grim conjecture. It ought to have been an unremarkable Tuesday dawn. I recall the autumnal bite against my skin, stepping out for the morning digest, the nascent sun spilling elongated silhouettes across the lawn. That's when I registered them, a sequence of mire-stamped impressions marching up the flagstones. A fleeting dismissal, Perhaps the delivery youth navigated a lingering puddle, but stooping for the rolled paper revealed prints too substantial, too deeply gouged into the damp earth for any adolescent. They were vast, widely spaced strides, hinting at velocity, at urgency. My gaze traced their path, an icy tremor ascending my spine as they culminated unerringly at my front door. Here the strangeness amplified. The footprints ceased dead on the bristled welcome mat, vanished, utterly. A scan of the periphery yielded nothing, no furtive shape within the umbra of the mature oaks flanking the property. Only the vacant street, breathing its distant, early commuter hum. With hands that betrayed a tremor, I turned the key, slipped inside, and instantly threw the deadbolt. Silence reigned within the house, absolute, undisturbed. Each object rested precisely where slumber had left it. I fought to quell the rising disquiet, attributing it to a mind overstimulated by late-night celluloid horrors. A potent brew of coffee followed, the ritual intended as an anchor. Yet seated at the kitchen table, my eyes compulsively flickered towards the window pane. The muddy declarations remained, stark evidence against self-deception. A persistent prickle crawled across my neck, the sensation of being observed. Work received a fabricated excuse of illness. The prospect of egress was intolerable. The morning dissolved into a restless patrol, room to room, testing latches, peering through slivers in the blinds. By midday, a fragile rationality asserted itself. An overreaction, surely. Proof was needed, tangible validation that my sanity held firm. Then recollection surfaced. The security cameras, installed the previous year following a spate of local burglaries. Neglected once the initial wave of caution ebbed, their presence now felt like a providential foresight. The laptop flared to life, my fingers unsteady on the trackpad as I navigated the security interface. Motion activated, the system promised a record of any nocturnal approach. I commenced the playback from the preceding evening, accelerating through hours of profound stillness. As the timestamp neared the witching hour, I decelerated the feed, scrutiny intensifying. Nothing. No spectral visitors, no skulking forms, merely the sporadic glide of headlights on the asphalt beyond. Onward the digital clock crept, my coffee cooling into a bitter afterthought. 1 o'clock yielded to 2. Still, emptiness. Just as doubt began to crystallize, convinced I'd overlooked some crucial detail, movement flickered at the frame's desolate edge. 3:17 a.m. My breath hitched. A silhouette materialized. Details swam in the grainy infrared wash, yet its stature was undeniable. Tall, unnervingly so. Its locomotion was aberrant, less a walk than a fluidic glide across the dew-kissed grass. Leaning closer, the monitor's pale light illuminating my face, my heart hammered a frantic rhythm. It advanced towards my door, its progress punctuated by abrupt, twitching halts. A pause upon the welcome mat stretched into an unnerving eternity. And then, gone. In the space between one frame and the next, it simply wasn't there. Obliterated. I rewound, replayed, again and again. No flicker of faulty light, no digital artifact. The entity had executed an impossible vanishing act. I slumped back, cognition grappling with the visual data. Such things were contrary to reason. Humans don't sublimate into ether. Yet the irrefutable proof glowed on the screen before me. The remainder of the day passed in a fugue state, oscillating between obsessive rewatching of the footage and anxious surveillance from the windows. The muddy prints persisted, defiant, tangible anchors to the inexplicable. As dusk bled into true night, anxiety coiled tighter. What if it returned? Locks were meticulously rechecked, curtains drawn like fortifying walls. I braced for a night devoid of sleep, the laptop perpetually open, the live feed burning into my retinas. 3:15 a.m., a stutter in the periphery. My lungs seized. There, materializing from the gloom, it traversed the lawn with that same gliding, unnatural cadence, trajectory locked onto my door. Paralysis held me captive, a primal urge to flee warring with a morbid compulsion to witness. It reached the threshold, stopped. Silence stretched, taut and brittle. Then a sound that turned my blood to ice. 3 distinct, sharp raps upon the wood. I jolted, the laptop nearly tumbling. The knocking echoed, harder, more insistent. Frozen, I was caught between raw terror and a perverse need to confront the source. A voice, low and resonant as shifting gravel, vibrated through the door. I know you are within. My sight encompasses you. My gaze shot to the laptop screen. The figure was absent from the camera's view. How could it see? Betraying every instinct shrieking for concealment, I found myself propelled towards the door. My hand, quivering uncontrollably, closed around the knob. A deep inhalation, a surge of desperate resolve, and I wrenched the door open. Nothingness greeted me. No towering presence, no harbinger on my stoop. Only the vast, silent emptiness of the night and those damnable mud tracks expiring precisely where I stood. I slammed the door, bolting it, my heart battering my ribs with violent force. What was happening? Was my mind fracturing? Sleep became a forgotten luxury that night and the next. The muddy footprints endured, mocking attempts to scrub them into oblivion, a constant testament to the bizarre siege. Days bled into a paranoid haze. More cameras sprouted around the property, an electronic thicket guarding every conceivable angle. Motion sensors were deployed, alarms wired. My home transformed into a besieged keep, yet sanctuary remained elusive. Nightly, at the ordained 3:17 a.m., the apparition manifested. Sometimes it drifted towards the door. Other times it merely lingered at the property line, a sentinel of shadow. Its countenance remained perpetually obscured, veiled by darkness or the camera's inherent limitations. I presented the recordings to confidants, to law enforcement, even consulting a specialist in phenomena beyond the veil. All witnessed the same undeniable images. None possessed an explanation. Police patrols intensified, cruising the darkened streets. But the nocturnal visitor remained unseen by official eyes. Weeks solidified into months. I eroded, becoming a hollowed version of myself, perpetually sleep-deprived, consumed by dread. My universe contracted to the dimensions of my house, my existence tethered to the glow of security monitors. Then, with the same abruptness that marked its arrival, the visitation ceased. One night, the figure failed to appear. The following night remained undisturbed, and the night after. Days accumulated into weeks. Hope, fragile and tentative, began to germinate. It seemed the nightly haunting had evaporated. Gradually, cautiously, I began to piece my fractured life back together. I risked excursions beyond my threshold, reconnected with neglected friendships. The muddy footprints had long surrendered to the elements, erased by rain and the passage of time. Yet even now, years removed, the memory remains indelible. Occasionally waking in the profound stillness before dawn, I catch myself holding my breath, straining to hear those 3 percussive knocks. And sometimes, reviewing the security logs more from ingrained habit than necessity, I perceive it, or believe I do, a fleeting tall shadow flickering at the outermost edge of the frame, gone in an instant, leaving me suspended in uncertainty. In those moments, the cold realization returns. Some enigmas refuse resolution. And I wonder, a familiar chill tracing my spine, if my midnight caller still waits, somewhere in the darkness, anticipating the perfect moment for its return. Mere weeks tethered me to this place, yet the factory felt ossified, a carcass of industry bleeding rust onto weathered brick. Its corrugated crown groaned under the passing sighs of the wind, a sound like tired metal bones settling. The first breath I drew inside was thick with the ghosts of oil and the sharp, metallic tang of long, cold shavings. I'd planned it as a waypoint, a grimy purgatory between chapters, save the coin, move on. Never did I fathom its tendrils would weave into my nerves, that the shroud of night within its walls could birth such primal fear. Tonight, I stand before the shadowed gullet of the basement stairs. A directive from the foreman. Inspect the dormant relics below. Ensure no slumbering fire hazard waits to wake. Mundane words for a task that thrums with unease. Above, the corridors swim in weak light, the overhead lamps spasming intermittently. Glance back. Rows of monolithic machines stand sentinel in the gloom, silent witnesses beneath the low electric thrum of fluorescence. The quiet is profound enough to amplify the rasp of my own breathing. Sweat slicks my palms against the cool cylinder of the flashlight. A nervous ritual. Flick, flick, the beam cutting the dimness. Then, the descent. With each step down, the air grows teeth, biting colder. The basement door, a slab of dense steel, shrieks its resentment as I heave it open, a sound suggesting years of sealed stillness. The atmosphere within clutches, heavier. Not mere dust, but a complex miasma. The damp earth breath of concrete, the rancid perfume of ancient grease, and something else. An elusive undertone, sharp and vaguely organic. I swallow against the thickness in my throat and step across the threshold. The flashlight's beam lances through the stagnant air, illuminating a long artery lined with pipes overhead, their valves frozen mid-turn by rust's inexorable grip. Walls of indeterminate gray bear weeping patches of water damage. The concrete floor pitches unevenly, cluttered in the corners with mangled scraps of metal and the splintered carcasses of crates. I take perhaps 3 steps when the steel door slams shut behind me with a concussive thump that jolts through my skeleton. My heart batters my ribs. Whipping around, I find the door inert, impassive. A twist of the knob confirms it isn't locked. It yields easily. Still, my breath comes short. I force a slow inhale, trying to dispel the sudden frost of panic, reminding myself of the simple, tangible task at hand. Forward, then, navigating a tangle of wires snaking across the floor. My light flickers, falters. A sharp tap against my palm steadies the beam. Onward. The corridor bleeds into a cavernous space populated by sleeping giants, hulking presses, lathes draped in shrouds of filthy canvas. A persistent dripping sound begins, impossible to pinpoint, its echo bouncing between metal surfaces like a frantic, tiny heartbeat. I approach the nearest press, a brute sentinel as tall as myself, its heavy frame scarred, its lever coated in a thick shroud of dust. "Check for hazards," the foreman said. "Loose parts, damage." Setting the flashlight down momentarily, its beam painting an oblique stripe on the concrete, I grasp the press handle. It refuses to yield, fused solid by time and neglect. Old grease stains the hinges, but nothing moves. Crouched there, assessing the machine's inertia, I hear it. Not a drip, not settling metal. Footsteps, unmistakable, behind me. Every muscle locks. I pivot my head, eyes straining into the gloom beyond the flashlight's spill. Nothing, just the impassive bulk of the next machine. Slowly, deliberately, I straighten. The air has become glacial, clinging like a shroud. Retrieving the flashlight, I sweep its beam in wide arcs, probing the shadows. Empty. Silence presses in, broken only by the lonely drip and the building's distant, subliminal hum. Nerves, I tell myself. Old buildings groan. Pipes settle. I push onward, deeper into the belly of the factory. The next section constricts, the corridor narrowing, forcing a careful path around jagged protrusions of twisted metal. One catches my sleeve, nearly tearing flesh. A hissed curse escapes my lips as I sidestep debris. Again the flashlight sputters, a desperate flicker this time. Another tap, harder. It dies. Utter negation. Darkness absolute, a palpable void swallowing sight, sound, orientation. I can't see my hand inches from my face. My throat constricts. A pins and needles chill races to my fingertips. Frantically I thumb the switch, once, twice, again, until blessedly the beam returns. Weak, anemic, but there. Relief washes over me, hot and swift, though my heart continues its frantic tattoo against my ribs. I emerge into a wider chamber, clearly a forgotten storage space. Shelves sag under the weight of obsolete gear and fractured tools. Coils of wire like metallic serpents, saw blades blooming with rust, dented metal boxes. Dust lies thick as velvet over everything. No overhead lights function here. Perhaps they never did. My flashlight is the sole star in this subterranean firmament, casting elongated dancing shadows that writhe like living things. Each footstep lands with unnerving clarity. Expectation hangs heavy in the air, the sense that something waits just beyond the edge of the light. Passing a row of towering shelves, a flicker registers in my periphery. A shape, hunched, distorted, wrong. My heart leaps, a painful jolt against my sternum. I wrench the flashlight beam towards it. Nothing. Only a cold metal support beam stands impassive in the light. My breathing turns ragged. Calm down, Elias, calm down. But my hands tremble, betraying me. I keep scanning, sweeping the light, the feeling intensifying. Something is fundamentally awry. Every instinct screams retreat, yet the stubborn knot of duty holds me fast. A side chamber beckons, filled with the skeletal remains of electrical panels and circuit breakers. I enter with caution, born of mounting dread. The floor crunches underfoot, littered with the brittle shards of long-dead bulbs. A panel on the wall bears a label bleached illegible by time. Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid need for normalcy, compels me to open it. Inside, mostly empty fuse sockets and disconnected wires, a dead nerve center. The flashlight flickers again. Darkness for a heartbeat. When the light returns, a fleeting impression near the doorway. A figure, instantly dissolving before my eyes can truly register it. Simultaneously, an icy caress brushes the back of my neck. Not a draft. There are no vents, no windows. I spin, beam cutting the air. Empty space. Yet I'm sweating, a cold sweat despite the chill, my shirt clinging, my neck hot. I swipe a sleeve across my damp forehead. Enough. This is madness. I'll head back, take a break, file an incomplete report. Let the foreman complain. I begin the trek back through the corridor, stumbling over unseen debris. The flashlight chooses this moment to flicker violently, plunging me into darkness again, longer this time. The silence is oppressive. Even my own footfalls sound muffled, absorbed by the waiting walls. Reaching the base of the stairwell feels like surfacing. The concrete steps ascend towards the faint hum of the factory floor above, a promise of relative sanity. I start climbing, the flashlight beam preceding me, the cold metal railing a grounding presence under my hand. Then, sudden, definite pressure on my shoulder. Fingers, icy cold, gripping through the thin fabric of my shirt. A jolt of pure electric panic surges through me. I twist violently, flashlight beam slashing through the empty air behind me. Nothing. Only the bare concrete steps and the oppressive dark. But the sensation lingers. A phantom weight. A chilling imprint raising the hairs on my arms. I don't hesitate. I scramble up the remaining stairs, not daring to look back. At the heavy steel door, heart hammering, I wrench it open and stumble into the main factory corridor, gasping, throat raw and dry. Towards the break room, trying to gather the frayed edges of my composure, but my mind races. Did I imagine it? That touch? It felt utterly real, substantial. Inside the small, stark room, I collapse onto a cold metal chair. The overhead fluorescent flickers mirroring my own frayed state. The refrigerator hums its monotonous tune. Marcus isn't here. The place feels utterly deserted. I lean forward, elbows on knees, burying my face in my hands, running fingers through my hair. Leaving feels like the only sane option, yet the thought of facing the foreman empty-handed, unable to confirm safety, gnaws. After minutes spent wrestling with fear and obligation, I drain the last of my water. I can't walk away. Not yet. Back into the corridor. The lights seem dimmer still, the old building's circuitry weary. I move slowly, deliberately, through the graveyard of ambition on the factory floor. Lathes, presses, cutters, silent conveyors frozen mid-task, as if the workforce had simply evaporated. And then I see it. Beyond a stack of dilapidated crates, another staircase descends, unmentioned by the foreman, an unexpected fissure in the known map. Hesitation prickles. Ignore it. Go home. But the question would linger, fester. With a sigh that feels heavy with foreboding, I approach the crates, shove them aside. The opening exhales pitch blackness and an air colder, deader than anything I've felt yet. A moment to brace myself, then down I go. The wooden steps groan under my weight, releasing clouds of ancient dust that swirl around my boots. Decades of neglect are palpable here. Piles of dismembered machine parts litter the corners. This corridor stretches further, deeper than the first basement area. My flashlight beam seems frail, swallowed by the immensity. I grip it tighter, fearing its imminent failure. My footsteps echo unnervingly, accompanied again by that faint, steady dripping. I try to follow it, moving past rusted metal cabinets hanging open like empty mouths, coils of cable, scattered toolboxes, collapsed crates bristling with rusty nails. This place feels sealed, forgotten. Then the footsteps return, behind me, heavier now, more deliberate, matching my pace exactly. A hunter's tread. I freeze. They stop. My pulse is a frantic drum against my eardrums. Slowly I turn, sweeping the light back down the corridor. Empty. Utterly empty, save for the glint of light on metal debris. But the feeling of being watched is no longer a feeling. It's a certainty, a pressure on my back. I force myself forward, mind screaming to finish this, just a quick look, then escape. The corridor opens into a vast storage room. Mammoth machines loom against the walls, some cannibalized for parts. Stacks of gears rust on shelves. Metal rods lie scattered. My flashlight flickers. I brace for it, and dies. This time the darkness lasts longer. Seconds stretch into an eternity of suffocating velvet blackness. Heart hammering against my ribs, I stand paralyzed, and then something brushes past my arm. Not air. Substance. A chilling displacement, as if a solid form just slipped by me in the void. The flashlight flares back to life. I whip it around, beam frantically probing the space, and I see it. Near a hulking machine on the far side, a dark silhouette. Jagged, wrong. Limbs bent at impossible angles, a grotesque perversion of the human form. It's there for only an instant, a searing afterimage burned onto my retinas before it melts behind the machine. A strangled cry lodges in my throat. My body refuses to obey, locked in terror. Somehow, I break the paralysis. Hands shaking so violently the flashlight beam dances uncontrollably, I stumble forward, trying to see behind the machine where the shape vanished. Nothing. A heavy wrench lies on the floor, half buried in dust. A scrap of torn cloth, snagged on a sharp metal edge, flutters faintly in a non-existent breeze. I don't know what it is, but I know it's here. Survival instinct overrides everything else. Leave. Now. I back away, keeping the trembling beam aimed toward the last sighting, glancing nervously in over my shoulder. My breath comes in short, sharp gasps. My legs feel like water. My head pounds. I navigate the corridor back towards the stairs, moving as fast as I dare without breaking into a blind run. The passage seems endless. Only my own frantic footsteps break the silence until I reach the base of the stairs. A scraping sound erupts behind me, metal dragging hard on concrete, close. I spin, flashlight beam stabbing the darkness. It lands on stacked crates, a rusted cylinder. Everything is still. Panic propels me up the stairs, each step an eternity, breath tearing through my open mouth. At the top, I burst through the door. The hallway above is silent, the main factory floor still deserted. Straight for the main stairwell, the one leading to the outside world. My footsteps echo with alarming loudness. I keep glancing back. Sweat plasters my hair to my forehead, my hands slick on the flashlight. Up again, towards the massive steel doors of the main entrance. Locked for the night. Key. Fumbling in my pocket, dropping it once. My fingers numb and clumsy. Retrieve it, Slide it into the lock. Twist. The heavy door groans open. Cool night air rushes in, a blessed shock. I stand on the threshold, gasping, heart pounding, feeling dizzy. I turn, one last look back into the factory's maw. The few remaining lights flicker erratically. For a split second, I swear I see movement deep in the corridor. Then, nothing. Even out here, under the indifferent stars, I can't shake it. That freezing hand on my shoulder, the pressure, the silent, possessive grip. I lock the door, the click echoing in the vast emptiness of the parking lot. Stumbling to my car, I get in, start the engine, but just sit there, hands gripping the wheel, breath shuddering, shirt clammy. I look up at the factory's dark windows, punctuated by those few weak, flickering lights. It appears dormant, just an old building, but I know better now. Something inside stirs in the deep places, shifts in the darkness. I don't call the foreman. I just drive, focusing numbly on the road ahead, trying to outrun the images replaying in my head, the echoing steps, the twisted silhouette, the undeniable pressure of that icy hand. I can still feel it, a psychic residue, a brand. The car heater blasts, but I'm shivering. My eyes keep darting to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something in the back seat. Home. I park, sit for a moment, aware that my entire body is trembling. My shoulders ache, legs weak as if I'd run miles. Inside my apartment, I lock the door, flood the space with light, toss my jacket onto a chair. My reflection stares back from the hallway mirror. Pale, eyes wide, haunted. The look of a man who has glimpsed something beyond the veil. How do I explain this? There's no neat checklist, no simple report of findings. Yes, everything down there is derelict, hazardous by sheer neglect. But that's not the story. The real story is the suffocating dread, the feeling of being watched, the shapes that flickered at the edge of sight and coalesced in the dark, the footsteps that weren't mine, and that final freezing touch. I have no name for what resides in that factory's depths. I only know I will not go back down there alone. Not ever. If asked, I'll demand backup, or I'll walk. No wage is worth feeling hunted by the unseen. That's the truth of it, raw and terrifying. The factory isn't just old, it's occupied. And every time I recall climbing those last stairs, I feel it again, that phantom pressure on my shoulder, cold and insistent, silently commanding me to stay. A pungent perfume, acrid and burnt, assaulted the air. The ghost of scorched rubber. Smoke, thick and gray, coiled from beneath the hood of my lifeless machine. I drifted onto the gravel shoulder of the forsaken country lane, momentum bleeding away until stillness claimed us. The engine gave a final shuddering cough, a death rattle that echoed the sinking in my chest. Above, the sun bled across the heavens, a spectacular hemorrhage of orange and crimson, yet its beauty felt like a mockery. Here I was, marooned in a vast emptiness, the ether devoid of signal, civilization and abstraction miles distant. With a reluctant heave, I wrestled the hood open, clinging to a fragile tendril of hope. Perhaps a simple fix. Steam hissed, a venomous serpent escaping the tangled guts of the engine, a metallic labyrinth I couldn't navigate. Mechanical ineptitude was my native state. Tools were a foreign concept. Frustration surged, and I slammed the hood closed with a clang that startled the quiet. Leaning back against the cooling metal, I scanned the panorama. Fields unfurled on either side, waves of golden wheat undulating in the twilight breeze. Far off, a solitary farmhouse glimmered, a single pinpoint of light bravely puncturing the encroaching gloom. My only beacon. Should I risk the walk, or gamble on the improbable charity of a passing vehicle? The dilemma hung heavy in the cooling air until a low rumble vibrated through the soles of my shoes. Relief, potent and swift, washed through me. An old pickup truck, bruised and weathered, slowed, its engine a tired growl. The driver, a man whose face bore the cartography of years and sun, possessed eyes that seemed unexpectedly gentle. He cranked down the window. "Bit of trouble?" His voice was rough-edged, like stones tumbling in a creek bed, yet not unkind. I managed a nod, gratitude loosening the knot in my throat. Yes, it just expired. I don't imagine you're versed in the mysteries of engines. A dry chuckle escaped him. He shook his head. "Can't say I am, miss, but town's down the way. Happy to give you a lift. Mechanic there, name of Gus, usually sorts folks out." A tremor of caution vibrated within me. Instinct, primal and sharp, screamed against climbing into a stranger's vehicle in this desolate expanse where silence would swallow any cry. But the last sliver of daylight vanished, consumed by the horizon. Options dwindled to none. "That would be incredibly kind." "Thank you," I murmured, striving to banish the nervousness from my tone. A smile crinkled the corners of his eyes as he leaned across the bench seat, unlatching the passenger door. "Hop on in. Silas, folks call me." "Eliza," I offered, sliding onto the worn upholstery. The cab held a peculiar blend of stale tobacco and pine-scented air freshener, oddly nostalgic, almost comforting. Silas wrestled the gear stick, and the truck lurched forward, resuming its journey down the darkening ribbon of road. My hand hovered near the door handle, a silent promise of escape. Yet as we rolled onward, Silas maintained a stream of easy conversation. He spoke of his farm, the rhythm of the seasons, grandchildren anticipated for a visit, a long-ago tale of his own breakdown, and a night spent walking under the stars. Slowly, inexorably, the tension coiled within me began to slacken. I found myself responding, even offering a faint laugh at one of his homespun jokes. But a dissonance began to thread through the comforting rhythm. We'd been traveling for what felt like an age, surely half an hour or more, yet no glimmer of town lights appeared, no reassuring signposts. The open fields had surrendered to dense, looming woods. The road narrowed, twisting deeper into shadow. Silas?" I ventured, the tremor I'd tried to suppress now vibrating in my voice. "Are you certain this is the route to town?" He cast a sidelong glance, his expression obscured in the dim dashboard glow, suddenly unreadable. "Oh, sure thing. Just a little shortcut I know. Shaves off a fair bit of time." Alarm bells, silent moments ago, now clamored violently in my mind. Fragments of chilling podcasts surfaced, narratives of women, trusting smiles and vanishing points. "Actually," I said, my mouth suddenly arid, "I think I'd rather return to my car. I can just wait there. Call for a tow." His grip on the steering wheel visibly tightened, knuckles gleaming white under the faint light. Now, he crooned, the geniality evaporating from his voice like mist. "No need for fretting. We're nearly there." My heart hammered against my ribs. Adrenaline surged, cold and electric. My fingers darted towards the door handle, poised to leap into the rushing darkness. Speed be damned. Precisely as my fingertips brushed the cold metal, Silas stomped on the brakes. The truck fishtailed wildly, screeching to a halt. I was flung forward, the seatbelt biting sharply into my chest. Before the world steadied, he'd lunged across, the central lock clicking with terrifying finality. "Sorry about this," he stated, his tone unnervingly placid. "But I can't rightly let you go. Not just yet." Panic detonated within me. I scrabbled at the door lock, desperate, frantic, but Silas seized my wrists, his grasp like forged iron. "Stop fighting," he growled, the sound low and menacing. "Only makes it harder on yourself." A scream tore from my throat, raw and hopeless, swallowed instantly by the indifferent forest. We were utterly alone, adrift in a sea of black trees. Silas restarted the engine, guiding the truck off the road, plunging deeper into the oppressive woods. I sat rigid, paralyzed by terror, my mind a chaotic whirl of unspeakable possibilities. After an eternity compressed into mere minutes, the truck's headlights illuminated a small, ramshackle cabin. The porch sagged, timbers rotting, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Silas cut the engine, the sudden silence profound and heavy. He climbed out, his boots crunching on the unseen forest floor, and rounded the truck. He wrenched my door open, seized my arm, and hauled me out. I struggled feebly, a useless gesture against his brute strength. "Please," I sobbed, tears tracking hot paths through the dust on my cheeks. "Please don't. Let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear it." He paid my pleas no mind, dragging me inexorably towards the cabin's dark maw. As we neared the dilapidated structure, a sound reached me that turned my blood to ice. The murmur of voices from within, not just one. Waiting. Silas thrust the door inward, shoving me forward. I stumbled, catching myself on hands and knees upon the gritty floorboards. Lifting my head, blinking through tears, my gaze swept the interior, widening first in shock, then dawning horrified comprehension. The cabin was crowded, men, women, a scattering of pale-faced children huddled together, their eyes reflecting the same terror that gripped me. And presiding over them, standing near a rough-hewn table, was a man whose face I knew instantly from flickering news reports. The charismatic leader of an apocalyptic cult, vanished without a trace months prior. "Welcome," the leader purred, his voice a silken threat. "We have been expecting you." Silas moved to stand beside him, a loyal disciple. "Brought another," he announced, his voice flat. "Like you asked." My mind reeled, struggling to assemble the fractured pieces. These people weren't Silas's confederates. They were his harvest, ensnared just as I was. The cult leader began to speak, weaving a tapestry of delusion about impending doom, about salvation for the chosen few gathered in this wretched place. His words washed over me, unheard. My eyes darted frantically, scanning the dim confines, seeking any sliver of hope, any fissure in this nightmare. And then I saw it, a small window near the cabin's rear wall, partially obscured by a leaning stack of cardboard boxes. It seemed just large enough. While the leader droned his poisonous prophecies, I began to inch sideways, moving with glacial slowness. The other captives watched, their gazes wide, mirroring a desperate alloy of fear and nascent hope. I reached the window, my fingers trembling as they fumbled with the latch. Rusted solid. It wouldn't yield. A panicked glance backward. The leader and Silas were absorbed in their lunatic discourse, oblivious. Drawing on a reservoir of adrenaline-fueled strength I didn't know I possessed, I threw my weight against the frame. With a groan of tortured wood, the window gave way, swinging outward. The sound echoed, unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Every head snapped towards me. "Stop her!" the leader shrieked, his composure shattering. But it was too late. I was already scrambling, halfway through the opening. Footsteps pounded on the floorboards behind me as I tumbled awkwardly onto the damp earth outside. I surged to my feet, launching myself blindly into the embracing darkness of the forest. Branches lashed my face, unseen roots snagged my feet, sending me stumbling, but I didn't falter. Shouts pursued me, the crashing sounds of pursuit echoing through the trees. I ran, lungs burning, legs screaming, propelled only by raw, unadulterated fear. How long I fled, I cannot say. Minutes blurred into an aeon. Gradually, the sounds of pursuit receded, replaced by the nocturnal symphony of the woods, crickets, the rustle of unseen creatures. I slowed, my breath tearing in ragged gasps, collapsing against the rough bark of a tree. Lost, disoriented, with no sense of direction, I knew only one thing. Stillness was death. I had to keep moving. As the first tentative fingers of dawn probed the dense canopy, painting the leaves in shades of gray and pearl, a sound reached me, distant, mundane, beautiful. The low rumble of traffic. Hope, fragile but fierce, surged anew. I stumbled towards the sound, emerging scratched and bruised onto the shoulder of a paved highway. A semi-truck, lights blazing, slowed and pulled over. The driver, his face etched with concern, called the authorities, huddled in the warm sanctuary of his cab, waiting for the flashing lights that signified rescue. The immense weight of the night descended. The dam broke, and I wept, great, shuddering sobs of terror and relief. In the ensuing days, amidst the sterile calm of police stations and the difficult terrain of recounting trauma, the full narrative emerged. Silas, the seemingly benign farmer, had been systematically harvesting the vulnerable for the cult, preying on stranded travelers like myself. The authorities raided the remote cabin, liberating the other captives, apprehending Silas and the self-proclaimed prophet. Escape was a matter of luck, of a rusted latch finally yielding. But the ordeal forged something new within me. Caution became my constant companion, a heightened awareness of the shadows that can lurk behind a friendly facade. Yet paradoxically, it also revealed an inner resilience, a tenacity I never suspected until survival demanded it. Now the sight of a vehicle stalled by the roadside evokes a complex battle within me, the urge to offer aid warring with the chilling memory of that night. I make the call, to the police, to a tow service, unable to simply drive past, yet forever unwilling to gamble my safety on the kindness of strangers again. For I learned, etched into my very soul, that sometimes the hand extended in help can belong to the most dangerous predator of all. The theater almost lost me to the night without a second thought. My final walkthrough concluded, the checklist mentally ticked off. A profound weariness settled deep in my bones, the magnetic pull of home eclipsing all else. But then, something ethereal threaded through the speaker tied to the main stage microphone. A delicate hum, unmistakably female, carrying a melody I couldn't place, ancient and unfamiliar. In that singular moment, the axis of my world tilted. I froze beside the mixing console, my gaze drawn irresistibly to the vast, empty stage, as my pulse kicked into a frantic rhythm. No living soul occupied that space. The intricate sound system rested dormant, on standby. Perhaps a ghost in the machine, some errant signal bleeding across frequencies. The thought offered flimsy comfort against the illogical reality. A final line check, I reasoned, just to be certain. Nearly midnight chimed before I conceded defeat, having traced every cable, tested every input. Nothing. No fault found. Yet the hum remained, an indelible resonance within the quiet chambers of my mind. The following afternoon found me back within the theater's embrace, seeking refuge in the familiar rituals of pre-show diagnostics. Arriving first was my preference, a shield of solitude against interruption or inquiry. Power amplifiers hummed to life, microphones awoke to scrutiny, and met only profound silence. No lingering static, no phantom vocalizations. That evening's show proceeded flawlessly. After the final bows faded, I lingered on the stage's expanse, gathering wayward cables, coiling their lengths with practiced efficiency. The heavy stage door clicked shut. Main lights died, plunging the cavernous space into expectant shadows. Descending once more to the sound booth for the ultimate shutdown sequence, I heard it again. The same voice, the same spectral purity, yet now it traced a different melodic contour, a fluid cascade of notes shifting like water. A prickle, cold and sharp, traced the nape of my neck. My skin tightened reflexively. Swallowing against a sudden constriction in my throat, I fought for composure. From the booth's glass-walled sanctuary, I reignited the stage lights, my eyes sweeping the heavy velour curtains, the rows of tiered seating. Vacancies stared back. The aisles stretched empty corridors. The stage itself remained starkly unoccupied, but the sound undeniably emanated from the monitor speakers. The fine hairs on my forearm lifted in unison. A pressure built within my chest, tight and unyielding. Systematically, channel by channel, I silenced the board. The singing persisted, unwavering, until the master mute plunged the booth into absolute quiet. The sudden absence of sound felt like a physical blow. Morning brought hesitant confessions shared with two colleagues, Alistair and Ben. Their faces registered polite skepticism, a thin veneer over patent disbelief. Fatigue, they diagnosed, was likely conjuring auditory illusions. I offered no argument, though an unshakable conviction resonated deep within me. I had been utterly awake, hyper-alert. Extended vigils are the very marrow of my profession. My craft demands an intimate understanding of every sonic nuance, every subtle hiss or hum the system breathes. Invention is not in my nature. When a lull fell over the afternoon's work, my resolve solidified. A full diagnostic excavation of the sound system became non-negotiable. Hours dissolved into meticulous inspection. Cables, wireless packs, frequency alignments. Every solitary piece of equipment underwent rigorous examination. Not a single flaw, not one technical aberration revealed itself. A part of me desperately wished the voice would vanish, retreat into silence forever. Yet a contradictory, more insistent yearning pulsed beneath. A need for closure, for the concrete proof of an error. And beneath that still, a raw, unnerving curiosity, a nascent obsession. Simply wanted to hear it again. That evening, a musical act graced the stage. I remained tethered to the wings, managing microphones while Clara, the stage manager, orchestrated the cues from her post. All proceeded according to plan. Post-performance, the familiar cycle began anew. Traversing the stage, collecting equipment, coiling cables, extinguishing the powerful stage lights. Then the inevitable return to the booth for the final shutdown. A subtle tremor ran down my arms as I keyed the main microphone for a test. Alone in the glass enclosure, my voice echoed slightly. Testing 1, 2, while my eyes tracked the level meters on the console. Silence. A small, fragile wave of relief washed over me. Then a whisper breathed through the monitors. Soft, slow, distinctly female. It sounded unnervingly like my name. Elias. I went utterly still. The console's meters barely quivered, yet the sound was undeniable. My ears, finely tuned instruments themselves, were not deceiving me. A sudden violent surge hammered in my chest. My mouth turned to dust. A clammy dampness bloomed on my palms. I pivoted, scanning the darkened auditorium. Nothing. The stage lay submerged in shadow. No flicker of movement. Leaning towards the microphone again, my voice raspy, I managed, "Who's there?" Only a low, crackling static answered. Pushing back from the chair, I moved towards the stage entrance and slapped the switch for the work lights. The cavernous space flooded with utilitarian brightness, revealing endless rows of empty seats, the stark geometry of the aisles, the waiting stage. Still deserted, an inexplicable compulsion urged softness as I called out, "Is anyone here?" My voice bounced back, amplified by the emptiness. Silence was the sole reply. I prowled the backstage labyrinth, checking dressing rooms, shadowed hallways, neglected corners. Each space yielded only dust and stillness. Returning to the booth, I killed the power to everything, forcing myself towards the exit, a tremor running through my limbs, a profound sense of disquiet settling over me. The next day, I mentioned it to Leo, my friend who handles the lighting rigs. A smirk touched his lips. "Mate, you need a holiday," he'd chuckled. I couldn't fault his reaction. It sounded like the cheapest sort of ghost story, but a certainty had lodged itself in my gut. This was real. Something resided within the theater's bones. That evening I arrived deliberately early, driven by a need to probe deeper. I ascended the narrow stairs to the catwalks high above the stage, navigating the dusty metal gridwork. Were there hidden speakers, decaying wires capable of generating such phantom signals? I found only layers of grime, obsolete fixtures, and thick, forgotten cables. Nothing to explain a woman's disembodied voice. Around 5, Clara arrived, informing me the night's performance was a small-scale play, minimal technical demands. I kept my unsettling observations locked away. Throughout the show, I remained anchored near the sound console, listening with an intensity that bordered on paranoia. Everything functioned perfectly. After the actors departed, I commenced my solitary ritual. Cleared the stage, stored the microphones, secured the cable runs, doused the stage lights. Around 11, back at the console in the booth, checking a patch connection, the air grew thick, heavy with unspoken tension. Then the faint hum returned. I activated the monitors. The hum swelled, coalescing into the familiar, strange melody. My chest vibrated sympathetically. My focus narrowed, locking onto the darkened stage below. Experimentally, I opened a single channel on the console, hoping to isolate the source. Instead, a distinct whisper emerged. "Come here." My entire frame jolted as if struck. My teeth ground together. Beads of sweat prickled my forehead. The impulse to cry out warred with a paralyzing fear. The voice repeated, gentler now, yet twisting my insides into knots. "Come here." Shoving back from the console, I descended to the main floor, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, my legs feeling strangely unreliable. I moved down the center aisle, gaze fixed on the looming stage. Why this compulsion? Why this irrational urge to obey? The voice murmured my name again, Elias, so softly it was almost lost in the ambient quiet of the building. My footfalls echoed as I stepped onto the stage itself. The floorboards groaned under my weight. Darkness reigned, save for the single spectral ghost light burning dutifully upstage. My eyes scanned the heavy curtains, the complex rigging, the painted backdrop. All appeared mundane, yet I sensed an unseen current, a subtle disturbance in the stillness. Slipping behind the main curtain, I navigated past looming set pieces and a forgotten, dust-shrouded piano. The voice fell silent. I stood motionless for a long minute, straining to catch the slightest sound, hearing only the low thrum of the building's ventilation system, the frantic pulse hammering in my own ears. Then from the shadows to my left, a soft, breathy laugh drifted towards me. I spun, nearly stumbling over a coiled power cord, adrenaline surging. My flashlight beam stabbed into the darkness, illuminating a door, the entrance to the basement storage area. A place I rarely ventured, cluttered and perpetually musty. The laughter seemed to emanate from its vicinity. Hesitantly, I approached, sweeping the light across grimy walls, the concrete floor, the haphazard stacks of discarded set fragments. My hand closed around the door handle, unlocked. Easing it open, I peered into the descending darkness. Dust motes danced in the flashlight's beam. The air hung thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. I took the first step down, testing each tread. My shoe scraped against concrete. Behind me, the heavy door swung shut with a dull thud that made me jump, expelling a sharp breath. My hands trembled violently. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed and thrown back by the stone walls. No answer. Reaching the bottom step, I scanned the subterranean space. Rows of shelves laden with forgotten props and defunct lighting gear lined the perimeter. A cluster of empty chairs huddled in one corner. The air felt denser here, heavier. Fumbling, I found the chain for a bare bulb hanging overhead. It flickered to life, casting a sallow glow over the dust and intricate cobwebs. I moved cautiously, checking behind shelves, beneath tables. Utterly empty. A creeping doubt surfaced. Had I imagined it all? Was this a fool's errand? My skin crawled, an urgent instinct screaming for retreat. Just as I turned to ascend, the voice whispered my name again. Elias. So close it felt breathed directly onto my skin. The hairs on my neck stood erect. I whirled around, flashlight beam slashing through the gloom. Near a stack of dilapidated set walls, a shadow seemed to detach itself, to shift. My pulse hammered, shaking my hand, blurring the light. I tried to speak, but my throat seized. My feet, leaden, carried me forward. Approaching the stacked flats, heart threatening to burst, I felt dizzy with dread. Nothing lunged from the shadows. I continued sweeping the light, kicking aside brittle cardboard boxes, searching for a crouching figure. Dust and debris were my only discovery. Then the faintest brush of air against my neck, like a sigh exhaled inches away. My body went rigid. I spun again, flashlight beam frantic. The voice whispered a single word, hushed, intimate, barely audible. Stay. My knees buckled. I saw nothing, yet the sound was irrefutably real, external to my own mind. I stood frozen, gasping for breath, struggling for clarity. Sweat dripped, stinging my eyes. Escape. Now. Turning off the overhead bulb, plunging the basement back into darkness, I scrambled up the steps. The door yielded. Backstage looked blessedly ordinary, yet every sense screamed high alert. I expected something, someone. Nothing appeared. Placing the flashlight on a nearby shelf, I walked quickly onto the stage, locked the basement door firmly behind me, deliberately ignoring the lingering presence. My flight to the booth was swift. The shutdown sequence executed with fumbling haste. I burst through the main exit into the cool night air, not even pausing to secure the outer doors properly. The shaking in my hands didn't subside until I was home, cocooned in the fragile safety of my apartment. Sleep a distant, unattainable shore. For days, an invisible tension followed me. I maneuvered to avoid solitude within the theater's walls, a difficult feat given the nature of my work. Excuses were fabricated for early departures, but inevitably, the duty of closing fell to me again. On that particular night, I vowed swiftness. Final checks on the board, cables coiled in determined silence. I'd set my phone to play music, a low barrier against the encroaching quiet, against that sound. It proved futile. After only a few minutes, the music abruptly ceased. A glance at my phone confirmed it was still powered on. The audio inexplicably paused, and then, through the monitors, clear and present, the female voice. My hands began to shake anew. My mouth went instantly dry. "Don't ignore me," it commanded. I nearly dropped the phone. My breathing grew shallow, rapid. "What do you want?" I muttered, the words feeling absurd, addressed to empty air. The voice seemed to materialize directly behind me. "Follow." My heart slammed against my ribs with such force, I thought I might actually faint. Hesitantly, I moved towards the stage door, eyes darting left and right, searching for any sign of intrusion. The hallway stretched away, dark and silent. I paused, caught between the primal urge to flee and an equally powerful, treacherous curiosity. I crept through the backstage area, footsteps muffled, senses straining. A low hum resurfaced, a single sustained note like a distant siren song, guiding me toward the stage left wing. I followed its pull, navigating around stacked crates and rolling costume racks. The hum led me to a halt before a locked supply closet, then abruptly vanished. I tested the knob, secured tight. A jolt of pure frustration shot through me. An inexplicable certainty gripped me. I needed to know what lay within that small, forgotten room. But the key was not mine. Backing away, I conceded the night. Retreating to the booth, I gathered my backpack and fled the building, my mind a whirlwind of questions about the closet's contents. It held only obsolete sound gear, relics we no longer used. I'd never given it a second thought before. Tomorrow, I decided, I would ask Clara for the key. Sleep offered little respite that night, my mind replaying the voice, the hum, the chilling commands. The next morning, feigning casualness, I asked Clara about accessing the supply closet. She shrugged, producing a key from a labeled ring. "Need something specific?" she inquired mildly. I manufactured a lie about inventory checks. Patience became my ally. I waited until the theater emptied once more, craving absolute solitude for what felt like a necessary confrontation. Anxiety warred with that strange, magnetic pull towards the closet door. Around 10 p.m., key clutched tight, I walked the echoing concrete hallway. The faint scent of fresh paint lingered from a newly touched-up set piece. My own footsteps sounded unnervingly loud. Heart racing, I reached the door, inserted the key, felt the lock yield with a satisfying click. Pushing the door inward, I fumbled for the light switch just inside. A single bare bulb flickered, illuminating the cramped space. Shelves lined the walls, burdened with antiquated mixers, skeletal remains of microphones, and Gordian knots of tangled cable. A few dusty equipment cases rested on the floor. I stepped inside, surveying the mundane clutter. Nothing seemed overtly out of place. Nothing offered an explanation. Then the overhead light pulsed erratically. A distinct chill traced my arms, accompanied by an odd compressive pressure in my chest. The hum returned, low at first, seeming to originate from within the very walls of the closet. It resonated in my ears, soft yet pervasive. Drawn to one of the larger cases, I unlatched it. Inside lay a vintage mixing console, shrouded in dust, nestled amongst spare fuses and brittle wiring. On a taped corner, faint scratches formed a name, illegible with time and wear. The hum intensified, vibrating through the floor, triggering a fresh surge of adrenaline. I glanced back at the open doorway. The hallway beyond remained empty, silent. "I'm here," I whispered, the words feeling both foolish and necessary. "What do you want me to see?" The hum abruptly ceased. Silence descended, thick and watchful, broken only by the ragged sound of my own breathing. Then directly behind me, a soft, distinct sigh. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting a desperate arc. Nothing. My lungs burned. Sweat trickled down my spine. Leaning heavily against a shelf, I fought to regain control of my racing heart. Without warning, the overhead bulb extinguished completely, plunging the closet into near-total darkness. relieved only by the weak beam of my flashlight. A hushed whisper followed, intimate and warm against my ear. The words indistinct, but the presence palpable. My entire body locked tight. Scrabbling blindly, I lunged for the doorway, desperate for escape. Flashlight beam dancing frantically, I stumbled towards the opening. Just as I reached the threshold, poised to cross back into the relative safety of the hallway, my name sounded again. Elias. Clear, resonant, as if spoken by someone standing inches away. I froze, unable to turn back, yet momentarily paralyzed. My stomach churned, my knees felt liquid. Then I bolted, pulling the door shut behind me, fumbling with the lock, hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't slow until I reached the main exit, gulping down the cool night air, not caring about the lights left burning in the deserted hallway. Outside, leaning against the rough brick wall, I took deep, shuddering breaths. My body slick with cold sweat, a dull ache throbbing behind my eyes. What did it want? This presence? This voice? It had drawn me to that closet, intensified its manifestations there, but offered no revelation. Was it a warning? An invitation? Did it want me to uncover something hidden, or simply to become trapped within its spectral domain? The theater felt sentient, watchful. I wouldn't return that night, and I would speak of this to no one else. Disbelief was a wall I no longer had the energy to scale. In the nights that followed, the voice persisted. Sometimes a fleeting melodic fragment caught on the edge of hearing. Other times my name whispered across the empty seats. The pull remained, a terrifying allure. I learned to work faster, streamlining my closing routine, minimizing my time alone in the echoing space. Yet the tension never fully dissipated. It lived in my muscles, coiled tight whenever the last patron departed, whenever the building settled into its nocturnal silence. Each time the voice reached out, the familiar cascade returned. The twisting gut, the parched mouth, the blood pounding a frantic rhythm in my ears. I still work in that old theater. Every evening, as the applause fades and the crowds disperse, I brace myself. I move through the familiar tasks, checking equipment, coiling cables, my senses perpetually heightened, my gaze drifting towards the shadows, waiting. I haven't ventured back into the basement. The supply closet remains locked, undisturbed. But sometimes I feel it, the voice, the presence, hovering just beyond perception, wanting discovery, or perhaps simply wanting surrender. I tell myself I can manage it. I tell myself it's faulty wiring, acoustic anomalies. But deep down, I know better. It's no glitch. And every night, as the last one remaining, I feel my body tense, anticipating the next whisper, the next hum, the next chilling command from the silence.